This is an outrage. You cannot do this.
When Black billionaire CEO Daniel Carter checks into a five-star hotel under a quiet reservation, he is mistaken for someone out of place and brutally humiliated by racist staff who drag him out in front of a shocked crowd. His silence fuels their arrogance, but what they don't know is that Daniel actually owns the entire hotel chain. From the whispered tensions of the lobby to the heated confrontations with security, the smug cruelty of the general manager, the public humiliation, and then the shocking unmasking of Daniel's true power. Each chapter escalates with suspense's assistant's outrage, his lawyer's arrival, the panicked scrambling of staff, and the poetic reversal as Daniel returns, not as a guest but as the boss. What follows is a ruthless firing, a press conference that ignites global outrage against systemic racism, and the collapse of the very man who mocked him. The story ends not with revenge but with dignity. Daniel, reminding the world that prejudice may silence for a moment, but justice, once spoken, cannot be stopped. The revolving glass doors of the Regency Grand Hotel spun silently as Daniel Carter stepped inside. His polished shoes clicked against the marble, a rhythm too steady to betray the storm inside his chest. The lobby shimmered gold chandeliers, white marble, polished mahogany counters, but none of it could polish away the way eyes followed him. At first, it was subtle. A pause at the concierge desk, a whisper between two bells, a glance from a receptionist that lingered a second too long. Daniel straightened his cufflinks and walked toward the front desk. His charcoal gray suit was tailored to perfection, his tie knotted with care, his wristwatch worth more than most cars outside, yet none of that seemed to matter. "Good evening," he said, his voice smooth, professional, carrying the weight of a man who had earned his place in this world. "Reservation under Carter, Daniel Carter." The young woman at the desk glanced at the computer screen, then back at him. Her lips tightened, her tone clipped. "Could you repeat the name?" Daniel kept his expression calm. "Carter, Daniel Carter." She typed, too slowly, eyes flicking back to him between keystrokes. Behind her, another staff member leaned in and whispered. Daniel caught the faint words, "Maybe he's lost." The receptionist straightened. "I'm sorry, sir. I don't see a reservation under that name." Daniel's brow furrowed. "That can't be right. The booking was confirmed days ago. Executive suite." Her tone hardened. "Perhaps you meant another hotel in the chain. The Regency Grand is very exclusive." Daniel inhaled slowly. "I'm aware. That's why I booked here." From the corner, a floor manager, thin man with slicked back hair and a permanent smirk, approached. "Is there a problem?" His eyes barely hid the suspicion in them. The receptionist gestured toward Daniel. "He says he has a reservation." "But I do," Daniel cut in, voice even. "Daniel Carter, Executive Suite." The manager gave him a long, scanning look. His eyes started at Daniel's face, then traveled deliberately down to his shoes, back up again, as though measuring him against some invisible checklist. Finally, he smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was the kind of smile people used when they believed they already knew who you were. "Sir, this is a five-star establishment. Our clientele is particular. Are you certain you're in the right place?" The words landed heavier than any curse. Daniel's jaw tightened. He wanted to say 1,000 things. Instead, he said nothing. He let silence speak, let the weight of his stare push back against the man's condescension. But silence, he knew, rarely protected black men in places like this. The manager's smirk deepened as if he had won. He tapped the counter. "Perhaps you should step aside, sir. We have other guests waiting." Daniel glanced around. No one else was waiting. Only empty velvet ropes and polished brass poles. He exhaled. Calm, always calm. That was how he had survived, how he had built his empire. But tonight, in the golden glow of chandeliers that seemed to mock his very presence, calm was harder to hold. He leaned forward slightly, his voice low. "I have a reservation. Executive Suite, Carter, Daniel. You will find it if you look properly." The receptionist hesitated, uncertain, but the manager shook his head, as though final. "Sir, perhaps you should leave before we have to call security." Daniel's heart clenched, not with fear but with fury. He forced his shoulders back, his chin high, outwardly composed, inwardly burning. The marble floor reflected his image back at him, a man dressed like power itself, treated like he had none. And for the first time that evening, Daniel allowed himself a faint, bitter smile. They had no idea who they were speaking to. Daniel's fingers drummed lightly against the marble counter, each tap measured, controlled. Inside, the rhythm was different, a steady pounding of anger and humiliation. The receptionist still stared at the screen, pretending to search, but the hesitation in her eyes betrayed the truth. She had found the reservation, she just didn't want to admit it. "I'd like you to check again," Daniel said, his voice low but firm. Before she could answer, the floor manager stepped closer, his cologne sharp, his tone sharper. "Sir, we already told you. There is no Carter on our list tonight." Daniel's jaw worked silently for a moment. "Would you like to see my confirmation email?" The man gave a theatrical sigh. "That won't be necessary. Sometimes, third-party websites make mistakes. This hotel caters to a very specific clientele. It's possible you," he paused, eyes narrowing, "misunderstood." Daniel's eyes locked onto his. "I don't misunderstand reservations." The tension stretched. Guests passing through the lobby slowed, sensing the weight in the air. A couple whispered near the elevators. A bellboy fumbled a suitcase onto a cart, eyes darting nervously between the men. Daniel slid his phone from his pocket, pulled up the email, and placed it on the counter. "Executive Suite, Daniel Carter. Booked directly through Regency Grand's corporate portal." The receptionist leaned closer to the screen, biting her lip. She glanced at the manager, as if silently asking for permission to confirm. But the manager didn't look. He leaned forward until his face was uncomfortably close to Daniel's. His smile was sharp enough to cut. "Sir, let's not make this difficult." Daniel's voice chilled. "Difficult? I'm showing you proof of my reservation. And I'm telling you," the man snapped, his voice rising now for the entire lobby to hear, "there is no record of you in our system. Perhaps you should try somewhere more suitable." The words stung, not for their creativity, but for their familiarity. Daniel had heard them before, in boardrooms, restaurants, airports. More suitable, always code for not here, not you. The receptionist flinched. "Mr. Lewis," she whispered to the manager. "Enough," Lewis barked. He turned to Daniel. "If you continue to argue, I'll have no choice but to involve security." Daniel straightened. "So let me be clear. You're refusing me service despite a confirmed booking." "Confirmed?" Lewis scoffed. "By whom? Some online scam?" Daniel held his gaze, silence pressing between them. Finally, Lewis gestured sharply to a nearby guard. "Escort this gentleman out." The guard, a burly man in a navy uniform, approached hesitantly. "Mr. Lewis, maybe we should do it," Lewis snapped. "Now." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. Not fear, he hadn't feared men like Lewis in decades, but fury. Fury at how easily they could strip dignity from a man who had built himself from nothing. Fury at how many others had suffered the same humiliation without the power he held quietly in his hands. The guard placed a firm hand on Daniel's arm. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step outside." Daniel didn't move. His voice was low, steady, almost dangerous. "I booked this room. I am a paying guest." Lewis sneered. "Not anymore. You're not." The guard tugged lightly. Guests were watching now, their curiosity sharp. Some lifted their phones discreetly, recording. Others turned away, uncomfortable, unwilling to intervene. Daniel pulled back his arm slowly, deliberately. His voice echoed across the lobby. "You're making a mistake." Lewis crossed his arms. "The only mistake was letting you walk through those doors." The words slammed into Daniel, harder than any shove could have. For a brief moment, his vision blurred not from tears, but from the sheer weight of rage pressing against his chest. The guard stepped closer, his grip tightening. "Sir." Daniel's gaze swept the lobby crystal chandeliers, polished marble gold-trimmed staircases, a palace of privilege built on money he had helped generate. Yet they looked at him as though he were dirt on the floor. With one last glance at Lewis's smug face, Daniel allowed himself to be guided toward the exit. The marble beneath his feet reflected his stride, each step heavier than the last. A mother pulled her child closer as he passed. A businessman shook his head. A young couple whispered. What did he do? Daniel's silence answered for him. He had done nothing. The glass doors opened, and the night air hit his face like a slap. Behind him, the manager's voice carried faintly. "People like that think they can buy their way in anywhere." Daniel stopped, just for a second. His shoulders stiffened, his fists curled, but then, slowly, he exhaled. The fury remained, but beneath it, something colder took shape, something sharper. He looked back at the towering Hotel Facade, its golden lights gleaming arrogantly against the night sky. "They don't know," he whispered to himself. His reflection in the glass doors stared back, steady, unbroken. "Not yet." The heavy glass doors of the Regency Grand closed behind Daniel with a muted thud, shutting him out as though sealing a vault. But the story wasn't finished, not yet. The guard hadn't simply escorted him. No, that word was too polite. He had guided Daniel through the lobby with a firm hand on his arm, like a trespasser caught sneaking in, and that meant every set of eyes in the chandelier-lit space followed them. So, please cooperate, the guard muttered under his breath as they crossed the lobby. His tone was almost apologetic, but the pressure on Daniel's arm remained. Daniel kept his voice measured, though it carried, I am cooperating. What I am not doing is pretending this is right. The lobby quieted, conversations dulled, replaced by murmurs. A woman in pearls leaned toward her husband. What did he do? Her husband whispered back, no idea. Must be serious. They don't escort out guests for nothing. The words pierced deeper than any shove. Lewis. The manager strutted behind them like a victorious prosecutor. This could have been avoided, sir. But you insisted on making a scene. Daniel turned his head slightly, his voice cold enough to frost glass. The scene was made the moment you decided my name did not belong on your list. Lewis chuckled, dismissive. Believe what you like. He gestured at the staff gathered near the desk. We protect our clientele. That's what matters. One of the bellboys shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Halfway across the lobby, a guest lifted his phone, pretending to text, but the camera lens gleamed. Another soon followed, more obvious. Within seconds, 3, 4, 5 phones angled discreetly toward Daniel. He saw it all. He felt it, his humiliation being recorded, digitized, ready to spread. The guard leaned closer. Sir, just keep walking. Almost there. Daniel stopped. He pivoted toward Lewis, the room holding its breath. Do you even realize what you're doing? What this looks like? Lewis smirked. It looks like we're maintaining our standards. The word standards dripped venom. Daniel's gaze swept the room. Look at me. I came here in a tailored suit, a confirmed booking, with nothing but respect. And yet you treat me as though I am less. You do this in front of your guests, your staff, your cameras. For what? For the color of my skin. Gasps fluttered. The silence was sharp, broken only by the faint ding of an arriving elevator. The receptionist shifted, eyes wide, lips parting. Mr. Lewis, maybe we should quiet, Lewis snapped. He has no reservation. End of story. Daniel's voice lowered, thunder beneath silk. End of story. No, this is the beginning of yours. The guard tugged gently. Sir, please. Daniel didn't resist. Not yet. He walked the final steps toward the door, his head high, refusing to shrink, even as whispers spread like wildfire. Did you hear what he said? Skin color? Maybe he was lying. Doesn't look like a liar to me. Phones lifted higher now, some openly recording. The lobby wasn't just watching, it was documenting. Lewis barked. Delete those videos. This is a private property. But the guests ignored him. The story was too irresistible. The guard opened the glass door. Night air spilled in. Daniel stopped once more, framed between inside and outside, belonging to neither. He turned his head slightly, enough for his voice to carry, without looking back. I will leave, not because you asked, not because you dragged me, but because one day soon, this hotel will beg me to walk back through these doors. The words weren't shouted. They didn't need to be. They dropped heavy, echoing, lingering. Lewis laughed, loud and mocking. Delusion is a dangerous thing, sir. Good luck finding accommodations more suited to your background. The cruelty in background was unmistakable. Daniel stepped outside. The doors shut with a hiss. For a moment, the city's night swallowed him, honking taxis. The glow of streetlights, the buzz of New York at full pulse. Yet the sound that stayed with him was the faint laughter still echoing behind glass. He stood on the sidewalk, chest rising and falling, his fists unclenched slowly. He looked up at the towering Regency Grand sign glowing above him in golden letters, and then headlights. A black car pulled up to the curb. Out stepped his assistant, Elena Morales, clutching a folder. She froze, confusion flooding her face. Mr. Carter, she asked, hurrying forward. What on earth? Why are you out here? Daniel gave a humorless smile. Apparently, I didn't belong. Her eyes darted to the lobby windows where staff lingered, still peering out. They kicked you out. They stripped me of dignity in front of everyone, he said quietly. His eyes never left the glowing hotel name. And they think that's the end of it. Elena's jaw tightened. Do you want me to call? No, Daniel interrupted. His voice was calm again, carved from stone. No calls. Not yet. He turned away from the hotel, sliding into the back seat of the car. Alina followed, stunned. The guard inside the lobby released a shaky breath, watching them drive off. He whispered under his breath, unheard by Lewis, "You just picked a fight with the wrong man." And outside, as the car pulled into traffic, Daniel Carter's reflection in the tinted window hardened. His silence was not surrender. It was strategy. The clock had started ticking. The car slid silently through Manhattan's traffic, the glow of skyscrapers flashing across tinted windows. Inside, the silence was thick, almost unbearable. Alina shifted nervously in the seat across from Daniel. Her voice finally broke through. "Mr. Carter, what just happened back there?" Daniel's gaze remained fixed outside, his reflection staring back from the glass, calm, unreadable. "What you saw," he said slowly, "was nothing new." Alina blinked. "Nothing new. They humiliated you. In front of everyone." Daniel turned toward her at last. His eyes weren't angry now. They were steady, almost wary. "They thought they humiliated me. What they really did was reveal themselves." Alina leaned forward. "Why didn't you tell them? You could have ended it in seconds. Just one sentence. 'I'm Daniel Carter. The Daniel Carter.' And they would have been on their knees." Daniel's lips twitched in a humorless smile. "Power doesn't always announce itself, Alina. Sometimes silence is more instructive. You learn who people truly are when they think you have nothing." She shook her head, incredulous. "But still, why put yourself through that?" Daniel's eyes drifted back to the window. The city blurred past, neon and gold. "Because for every Daniel Carter who can walk away, there are 1,000 men and women who cannot. They suffer the same indignities, sometimes worse, with no voice, no shield, no recourse." Tonight, I was reminded why silence can be a curse as much as a strategy. The driver's voice crackled softly from the front. "Sir, are we heading straight to the suite at the plaza?" Daniel leaned forward. "No, back to the Regency Grand." Elena's head snapped around. "Back, after what they did." Daniel's voice carried the weight of iron. "Yes, Bach," she frowned, confused. "Why?" His reply was almost casual, but his eyes burned. "Because they work for me." For a moment, Alina thought she misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" Daniel finally turned fully toward her, his expression calm but sharpened like a blade. "The Regency Grand, the entire chain. I am the majority shareholder, 42% ownership. Every manager, every staff member, answers to me." Elena's jaw fell open. "You," she stammered, "you own the hotel, and they dragged you out like that." Daniel nodded once. "Yes." Her voice rose, disbelief laced with anger. "Then, why didn't you just tell them?" Daniel leaned back, folding his hands in his lap. His voice was quiet, steady. "Because power isn't for proving, it's for showing. And tonight, they will see." Elena's chest tightened. "You mean?" Daniel's eyes narrowed, fixed on the glowing skyline. "I mean, when I walk back through those doors, it won't be as a guest asking for a room. It will be as the man who owns the floor beneath their feet." Silence stretched, heavy and electric. Finally, Alina whispered, "They won't see it coming." Daniel's reply was soft, almost cold. "They never do." The car turned, weaving back toward the hotel's district. Elena's pulse quickened. She had seen Daniel command boardrooms, silence rivals with a word, close deals worth billions. But tonight felt different. Tonight wasn't business, it was personal. She studied him, the stillness in his posture, the fire banked in his eyes. For 20 minutes, they had stripped him of dignity in public. For the next 20, he would strip them of power. As the Regency Grand's glowing facade came back into view, Daniel spoke again, his tone more reflective now. "Do you know what dignity is, Alina?" She hesitated. "Respect." "No." His gaze didn't waver from the hotel lights. "Respect is given by others. Dignity is claimed by yourself. They tried to take mine tonight, but dignity isn't theirs to take. It's mine to show them, and to remind them what happens when they trample it." Alina swallowed hard. "So what's the plan?" Daniel's mouth curved into a thin, razor-sharp smile. "The plan is justice, swift, public, irrefutable." The car slowed at the curb. The same golden letters gleamed above the revolving doors. The same staff lingered inside, laughing, unaware of the storm heading back their way. Daniel straightened his cufflinks, every movement deliberate. He looked every bit the executive they had refused to see. As the driver opened the door, Daniel stepped out, his voice low, meant only for Alina. "Let's see how quickly laughter dies when truth walks in." And with that, he strode toward the doors, his reflection once again framed in the marble and glass. But this time, he wasn't walking out. He was walking back in. The revolving doors spun again, and this time Daniel Carter entered not as a man seeking service, but as the master of the house returning to claim it. Behind him walked Alina Morales, clutching a sleek leather folder, and to his left strode Adrian Blake, his legal advisor told, sharp and carrying a presence that filled the marble lobby with quiet authority. The laughter near the front desk faltered. Conversations died midst. A hush swept across the gilded space, as though the chandeliers themselves sensed a change in the air. The receptionist was the first to see him clearly. Her eyes widened, lips parting in shock. "He's back," she whispered. Lewis, the floor manager, smirked, striding forward with false bravado. "Sir, I thought we made it clear this establishment." Daniel raised a hand. Just a small gesture, but it froze Lewis mid-step. "You," Daniel said quietly, his voice slicing through the silence, "call your general manager. Now." Lewis blinked, scoffing nervously. "Excuse me, I don't take orders from." Adrian stepped forward, producing a card from his inner pocket with deliberate precision. "You'll want to take this one." Lewis snatched the card, glanced down and, pale, his bravado wavered. "Your legal counsel." Adrian's gaze was ice. "General manager." Immediately, guests lingered nearby, sensing something extraordinary. Phones tilted upward again, recording. The tension in the room was palpable, like the moment before thundercracks. The receptionist stammered, "Mr. Lewis, maybe we should do it." Lewis snapped. Though his voice carried less certainty now, he hurried toward a side office, clutching the card as if it burned. Daniel didn't move. He stood tall in the center of the lobby, eyes sweeping the room, the very same marble floor that had reflected his humiliation less than an hour ago. Now, it reflected his composure, his power, his inevitability. A bellboy approached timidly, whispering, Can I help you with your bags, sir?" Daniel's eyes softened slightly. "No, but thank you." The boy nodded quickly, retreating. Minutes later, Lewis returned, flustered, followed by Henry Dalton, the general manager of the Regency Grand. Dalton was a broad man in an immaculate navy suit, face flushed from rushing. He approached with an uneasy smile that faltered when he saw Adrian, and then Daniel. "Good evening," Dalton began. "I understand there's been some confusion." Daniel's silence was unnerving. Elena stepped forward, opening the folder with crisp efficiency. "Mr. Dalton, allow me to introduce you properly. This is Daniel Carter, founder and CEO of Carter Global, majority shareholder of Regency Grand International." Dalton's jaw slackened. "Majority shareholder." Elena's tone sharpened. 42%, to be exact. "His name is on your board. His signature finalizes your budget. His approval secures your future. And tonight, your staff dragged him out like an intruder." Gasps rippled across the lobby. The guests recording nearly dropped their phones, then held them higher, realizing the gravity of what they were witnessing. Dalton's color drained. He turned sharply toward Lewis. "Is this true?" "Did you?" Lewis sputtered, panic setting in. I didn't know." "He never said who he was." Daniel finally spoke, his voice even deadly calm. "You didn't need to know who I was. You just needed to treat me like a human being." The words struck heavier than a shout. Silence thickened, the weight of it pressing down on every staff member. Dalton stammered, "Mr. Carter, please, let us resolve this privately." "In my office." Daniel shook his head. "No, here, where it happened. In front of those who watched. In front of those who stayed silent." His eyes swept across the guests, the staff, the phones capturing every second. "This is where it began. This is where it ends." Elena's chest swelled with pride. She had seen Daniel command boardrooms before, but this was something else. Lewis tried again, desperation cracking his voice. "Sir, it was a misunderstanding." A simple Daniel cut him off with a single look. "Don't insult me with that word." Adrian stepped in smoothly. "Mr. Carter has requested a full staff gathering." "Now." Dalton hesitated, but Adrian's gaze sharpened. "Now." Within minutes, the lobby filled. Receptionists, bellboys, concierges, bartenders all summoned. They lined the marble floor nervously, their whispers hushed, their eyes darting. Daniel stood before them, silent for a long moment. The only sound was the faint hum of the chandeliers. Finally, he spoke. "An hour ago, I walked into this hotel as your guest. I was treated not as a guest, but as a problem to be removed. Tonight, I walk back and not as a guest but as the man who signs your paychecks." A collective gasp swept the room. Daniel's voice deepened. "And now, we will see who deserves to stay, and who does not." Dalton swallowed hard, his hands twitching. Mr. Carter, perhaps we should. Daniel turned to him sharply. You'll get your chance to explain, Dalton, but first, they will. His eyes cut toward Lewis and the receptionist, both pale as paper. Lewis stammered, Sir, I was only following. Daniel's hand raised again, silencing him instantly. He stepped closer, his words like a blade. Your policy is not professionalism. It is prejudice dressed in uniform. And tonight, the uniforms will come off. The staff shifted uneasily. Guests leaned forward, captivated, their cameras unblinking. The air in the lobby no longer belonged to chandeliers or marble. It belonged to Daniel Carter. And tomorrow, the world would know what happened here. The lobby had become a theater. Chandeliers burned bright overhead, casting long, accusing shadows. Guests lined the staircases, balconies, and velvet sofas, their phones raised like silent judges. The staff stood in rows, uniforms pressed but spirits unraveling. At the center, Daniel Carter, no longer the man dragged out in humiliation, but the storm returning to demand reckoning. Daniel's voice carried, low but unyielding. An hour ago, I stood here, just as I stand now. The difference, he let his gaze travel across the faces. Then, you saw a man who didn't matter. Now, you see a man who owns this place. And suddenly, your posture changes. Why? No one answered. Daniel turned toward Lewis, the floor manager. You first. Tell me, what did you see when I walked in? Lewis swallowed hard, sweat beading on his temple. Sir, I thought you didn't look like a guest. You weren't dressed. Dressed? How? Daniel's words sliced. Say it. Lewis stammered. Casual. Not in the way our guests usually. Daniel's jaw tightened. You mean, not white, not in a tailored suit, not carrying luggage that screams wealth. Lewis flinched. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Daniel pressed. So, your standard for service is not courtesy, not hospitality, but stereotype. If I don't fit your picture, I don't belong. Is that it? Lewis's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came. Daniel pivoted to the receptionist, the young woman who had smirked when he was dragged out. Her face was pale, her hands trembling behind the desk. You, Daniel said, his eyes locking on her. When I asked for help, what did you do? Her voice cracked. I followed protocol. Protocol. Daniel's voice thundered, shaking the marble halls. Your protocol told you to laugh while a man was humiliated in front of strangers. Your protocol told you to smirk while security laid hands on me. Tell me, where in the handbook is that written? Tears welled in her eyes. She looked down, unable to answer. Daniel turned, sweeping his gaze across the assembled staff. Every single one of you saw it. Some laughed, some looked away. None spoke. And why? Because you thought I was powerless. Because you thought I was just another man you could discard without consequence. He paused, letting the silence suffocate them. But you were wrong, and tonight, the consequence has come. Dalton, the general manager, finally stepped forward, hands raised as if to calm a storm. Mr. Carter, please, you must understand this was an isolated incident. My staff made mistakes, yes, but Daniel cut him off sharply. Do not use that word. Mistake is spilling wine on a tablecloth. Mistake is misplacing a reservation. This was not a mistake. This was a choice. Dalton stiffened, but Daniel pressed on. You hired them. You trained them. You signed off on the culture that allowed this. Tell me, how many times has this happened when there were no cameras, no witnesses, no shareholders standing in your lobby? The weight of the question pressed the air flat. Guests shifted uncomfortably, the reality settling like dust on their clothes. Adrian, Daniel's legal advisor, stepped forward, his voice raised. Mr. Dalton, records will show every prior complaint filed against this hotel. We will investigate how many were buried, ignored, or dismissed. And if this culture extends beyond tonight, he glanced at the recording phones, it will not stay buried much longer. Dalton's face reddened, his polished composure cracking. That won't be necessary. We can handle this internally. Daniel stepped toward him, voice cold as stone. No, Dalton, you don't get to bury this internally. You don't get to hide this behind velvet curtains and marble floors. Tonight, this is public, and tomorrow, the world will see it. A voice rose timidly from the staff line. It was the bellboy, the same young man who had offered to help with Daniel's bags earlier. His voice trembled, but he forced himself forward. Sir, I didn't stop them. I should have. I was scared, but I knew it was wrong. The lobby froze. The courage in his words shattered the silence like glass. Daniel's eyes softened slightly. Your honesty is more than most have offered tonight. He glanced at the others. Learn from him, because silence makes you complicit. Silence builds walls higher than marble. Lewis broke, voice rising in desperation. Sir, please, I was only doing my job. I didn't mean. Daniel turned on him with a glare that silenced the room. You didn't mean to judge. You didn't mean to assume. You didn't mean to strip me of dignity in front of strangers. No, Lewis, you meant every second. You just didn't mean to get caught. Lewis's shoulders sagged. He had no defense left. Daniel drew a breath, his voice steady, commanding. Hospitality is not marble floors. It is not chandelier. It is not gold-plated pens at a front desk. Hospitality is humanity. And tonight, this hotel had none. He paused, his words hanging heavy. But that changes now. Dalton's voice shook. What do you intend to do? Daniel turned slowly, his gaze sweeping the trembling staff. First, accountability. Those who laughed, who mocked, who laid hands on me will no longer wear this uniform. Effective immediately. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Lewis's face drained of color. The receptionist sobbed softly, knowing her fate was sealed. Daniel continued, unflinching. Second, training. Not the empty modules you hide behind, but real, uncompromising education on dignity, bias, and respect. Every staff member will complete a tour. They will not remain staff. Murmurs spread, a mix of relief and fear. And third, Daniel's eyes hardened. This hotel will no longer operate in shadows. Every incident, every complaint, will be logged, investigated, and made transparent. Because culture does not change in silence, it changes under scrutiny. The lobby was still, the only sound the quiet, relentless ticking of the grand clock above the reception desk. Daniel's voice dropped lower, but carried farther. This is no longer about me. This is about every guest who walked through those doors and felt lesser. Every person silenced by policy, by prejudice, by arrogance in a pressed suit. Tonight ends that era. And if you cannot live in the new one, walk out now. The silence was deafening. No one moved. Daniel looked once more at the staff, the guilty, the ashamed, the fearful, and the few who dared hold their heads high. Then he stepped back, voice calm again, though it cut deeper than ever. Your uniforms may hide who you are, but tonight they revealed it. The guests erupted not in applause, but in murmurs, gasps, whispers that would carry into headlines by morning. Phones lowered, messages sent, videos already uploading. The reckoning had begun, and Daniel Carter had only just started. The silence in the lobby broke like glass. Lewis, the floor manager, stumbled forward, panic etched across his face. Sir, Mr. Carter, please. You can't do this. I've worked here 10 years. I have a family. You can't just throw me out. Like Daniel's voice cut clean through his begging. Like you threw me out. Like you threw out countless others who didn't look the part. Lewis's mouth opened, but no words came. His eyes darted desperately toward Dalton, as though the general manager could shield him. The receptionist collapsed into a chair, sobbing into her hands. I didn't mean it. I was just nervous. Everyone else was watching me. I didn't know what to do. Daniel turned toward her, expression unwavering. You smirked while I was humiliated. You smirked because you thought it was safe, because cruelty has been rewarded in this place. That is not nervousness. That is choice. Her sobs deepened. A colleague tried to console her, but Daniel did not waver. Dalton finally stepped forward, his voice shaking with urgency. Mr. Carter, please, listen to reason. These people, yes, they acted poorly, but mass firings that will cripple operations. It will create chaos. Guests will see this hotel as unstable. Daniel's eyes snapped toward him. Chaos. Dalton, what guests saw tonight was chaos. Guests saw a man dragged through marble halls like an intruder. Guests saw staff laugh while someone's dignity was stripped. Guests saw silence from every leader, including you. Dalton's mouth tightened, but Daniel pressed harder. And now, you want me to protect your brand more than your people. Tell me, when did your balance sheets become worth more than humanity? Adrian.com, but firm, stepped in. Mr. Carter, the law is clear. You are under no obligation to retain employees who engage in discrimination. And as majority shareholder, you control operational authority. Their employment is not protected from accountability. Dalton's composure cracked. This is madness. You'll destroy everything I've built. Daniel's voice was ice. No, Dalton. You destroyed it. I'm rebuilding. A ripple of voices rose from the staff. Some whispered angrily, others muttered prayers. A few tried to plead their innocence. One security guard, the man who had put his hands on Daniel earlier, stepped forward, defiance in his tone. I was just doing my job. If a manager says throw someone out, I throw them out. That's protocol. Daniel's gaze pierced him. Protocol is no excuse for cruelty. You had a choice. You could have asked questions. You could have hesitated, but you didn't. You put hands on a guest without cause. That is not protocol. That is violence. The guard's jaw clenched. He stepped back. Defeated. The young bellboy, the only one who had spoken up honestly, earlier, shuffled nervously, eyes darting around the lobby. Then, with trembling courage, he spoke again. Mr. Carter, not everyone here is like them. Some of us, we just try to keep our heads down. We don't want to lose our jobs. But I've seen things. I've seen guests treated differently, ignored, followed, whispered about. It's wrong. And if you want to change things, I'll stand with you. The lobby went still. His voice cracked, but it echoed louder than the chandeliers above. Daniel's eyes softened, just slightly. What's your name? Marcus, sir, the boy said, voice unsteady. Marcus. Daniel nodded. You'll have a place here, if you want it, because honesty takes more courage than silence. Lewis dropped to his knees. His pride crumbled, his voice shaking with desperation. Please, Mr. Carter, I swear I'll change. I'll take the training. I'll apologize. I'll do anything, just don't take my job. My family depends on me. Please. All eyes turned to Daniel. For a long moment, he said nothing. The weight of power, of justice, of humanity, pressed down heavy on the air. Finally, his voice rang, outmeasured, deliberate. Your family should not pay for your cruelty, but they must learn, as you must learn, that actions have consequences. Tonight, you will leave this hotel, not as punishment alone, but as a lesson. You may rebuild your life elsewhere, but not here. Lewis broke into sobs, shoulders shaking. Dalton tried one last time, his voice bitter, desperate. And what about me, Carter? Am I next? Are you going to erase me too, like the rest? Daniel turned, facing him squarely. You are not erased. You are exposed. You led this place. You built its culture. And tomorrow, when the world watches, they will not only see a staff that failed, they will see the manager who allowed it. Dalton's face went pale, rage and fear warring behind his eyes. You'll regret this, he whispered. Daniel stepped closer, his voice quiet but deadly. No, Dalton, you will. The guests in the lobby were silent, phones still recording. Every word, every tear, every firing, it was all being captured. Unstoppable, undeniable. Daniel turned back to the staff. Those who mocked, those who touched me, those who laughed, you are done here. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out, not as I was escorted, but with dignity. You did not show me leave now. One by one, heads bowed, shoulders sagged, lives collapsed. Some protested, some cried, some walked silently. Security, different guards, nervous but obedient, guided them out. The lobby thinned. Only a fraction of the staff remained. Those who had been silent, those uncertain, those watching everything collapse around them. Daniel faced them. To those who remain, you have a choice. You can stay and build a new culture from the ashes of the old, or you can leave, clinging to a broken system. But no, this change is no longer optional. It is survival. No one spoke, but the weight of his words settled heavy on their hearts. Finally, Daniel turned to Adrian. Draft the notices. Effective tonight. Adrian nodded. Already underway. Daniel looked back at the staff, his voice carrying the final blow. Tonight, justice begins here. And if you think it ends with this lobby, you're mistaken. This is only the beginning. Phones clicked off. Guests whispered. The video would spread like wildfire by morning. And as the staff filed out, broken and shaken, one truth remained clear. The hotel was no longer Dalton's kingdom. It was Daniel Carter's battleground. Morning broke with headlines screaming across every screen. Black CEO humiliated at luxury hotel, fires staff on the spot, racism exposed in marble halls. Viral video sparks national outrage. Justice served in real time. Daniel Carter's hotel reckoning. Clips of the confrontation flooded social media. Lewis begging on his knees, the receptionist sobbing, Dalton's pale face trembling with rage. Millions had seen it. Millions were still watching. Inside his penthouse suite, the very one he'd been denied the night before, Daniel stood before the window, coffee untouched, watching cameras swarm outside the hotel gates. Adrian entered, phone buzzing with constant alerts. It's everywhere. News outlets, blogs, influencers, even late-night shows. You're trending in 40 countries. Half the world is calling you a hero. The other half, well, they're demanding Dalton's head. Daniel didn't turn. His reflection in the glass looked tired, but resolute. And the hotel. Adrian exhaled. Cancellations through the roof. Sponsors pulling out. A dozen shareholders called me already, some furious, some thanking you. Dalton hasn't been seen since last night. Daniel finally faced him. Good. Let him feel what silence feels like. Down in the lobby, the atmosphere was unrecognizable, gone with the sneers and casual arrogance. The remaining staff whispered nervously, afraid to even glance at guests. Marcus, the young bellboy, polished brass rails with nervous focus, but when Daniel walked past, he straightened proudly, giving a respectful nod. Daniel paused. You stayed. Marcus swallowed. I said I would, sir. Someone has to show it's different now. A faint, rare smile touched Daniel's lips. Then, let's make sure it is. Meanwhile, Dalton sat alone in his office, blinds drawn, phone buzzing endlessly. His empire was collapsing in real time. A call came through. He snatched it up. This is Dalton. A cold voice answered. This is the board. Effective immediately. You're suspended from all operations. An internal investigation will proceed. Dalton's voice cracked. You can't. You know me, I built this brand. You can't let Carter. The voice cut him off. You built a culture of rot. Now the world sees it. You're finished. The line went dead. Dalton stared at the phone, color draining from his face. By midday, Daniel held a press conference in the grand ballroom. The same chandeliers that had mocked him now glistened above a sea of microphones, reporters, and flashing cameras. He stepped to the podium, his presence commanding silence. Last night, I was dragged through this lobby like an intruder, not because I posed a threat, not because I broke a rule, but because of bias, because I did not fit the picture in their minds of who belongs in wealth, in luxury, in power. The room was hushed, every lens trained on him. But here's the truth. This is not about me. This is about every black guest who has been followed in stores, every traveler questioned at front desks, every voice silenced by laughter and protocol. What happened here is not isolated. It is systemic, and it ends now. Reporters scribbled furiously. Cameras flashed. Daniel's voice grew sharper. Effective immediately. This hotel will implement new policies, transparent complaint logs, mandatory bias training, accountability measures at every level. This will not be a palace for marble, it will be a home for humanity. He paused, scanning the sea of faces, and to those who say this will hurt profits, listen closely. Profit built on humiliation is poison, and poison destroys empires. This empire will be rebuilt on dignity, or it will not stand at all. Applause erupted, not just from reporters, but from staff standing along the walls, and even some guests who had come to witness history. Later, back in the suite, Adrian placed a tablet on the table. Dalton's face filled the screen, caught by paparazzi, shoving cameras away, looking disheveled. Broken. Adrian spoke quietly. He's ruined. No offers, no allies, sponsors cutting ties. His name is mud. Some are calling it the fastest fall from grace in the industry. Daniel studied the screen for a long moment, then set the tablet aside. Poetic justice isn't seeing him ruined, it's seeing the system that enabled him dismantled. He was just a symptom. That evening, Marcus knocked timidly on Daniel's door. Sir, I just wanted to say thank you, not for saving the hotel, for making me believe it can change. Daniel looked at the young man, so green, so raw, but so unbroken. You remind me of myself. Once. Don't waste that courage. Keep speaking, even when it shakes your voice. That's how change survives. Marcus nodded, eyes shining, and slipped away. Night fell again over the city. The hotel's lights gleamed, but beneath the glow, it no longer felt like the same place. Daniel stood on the balcony, wind stirring his jacket, the city alive below. A memory of last night flickered, the hands on his shoulders, the laughter, the shame. Then he looked down at the swarm of cameras still camped outside, the world waiting for what came next. Caught his voice, quiet, carried only to himself. They thought humiliation was the end, but it was the beginning, and for the first time in years, Daniel Carter allowed himself to breathe, not in defeat, not in bitterness, but in victory earned through fire. The reckoning was complete, but the war for dignity had only just begun. The city buzzed with Daniel Carter's name. For 3 days straight, the hotel lobby was a war zone of cameras, microphones, and guests demanding answers. Videos of the confrontation had crossed oceans, sparking conversations from boardrooms to classrooms. Memes, hashtags, op-eds all swirling around a single truth. Prejudice had been caught red-handed, and justice had struck back. Dalton had vanished, or so he thought. On the fourth evening, Daniel received a call from Adrian. They found him. He's booked for a live interview. Channel 6. He's going to try and save himself. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Then, let him speak. The world is listening now. The broadcast room glowed under hot studio lights. Dalton sat hunched in a tailored suit that suddenly looked too heavy for him, makeup unable to hide the bags under his eyes. The host leaned forward, voice measured. Mr. Dalton, millions saw the viral footage. They saw your staff mistreating Daniel Carter, the majority shareholder of your hotel. What do you say to them? Dalton forced a strained smile. It was a misunderstanding. My staff overreacted, and Mr. Carter, he exaggerated for the cameras. He staged a scene to make himself look like a hero. The host arched an eyebrow. Staged? You're saying the footage taken by dozens of guests was fabricated? Dalton's smile faltered. I'm saying perception can be twisted. Within minutes, social media exploded. Screens lit up with furious comments. He's gaslighting in real time. This man hasn't learned a thing. How can he lie with the whole world watching? And then, the feed cut unexpectedly. A new figure stepped onto the stage. Daniel Carter. Gasps rippled through the audience. Dalton's face drained of color. Daniel didn't look at him. He addressed the cameras, voice steady, cutting through the static of outrage. Misunderstanding. Staged. Let me tell you what was staged. The smirk on that receptionist's face that was staged by years of being told cruelty was safe. The silence in that lobby that was staged by a culture of fear and bias. And Dalton's denial tonight that is the final act of a rotten play that ends now. Dalton stammered. You can't just barge in here. Daniel turned, finally meeting his eyes. I don't need permission to tell the truth. The host sat back, stunned, as Daniel stepped closer to Dalton. You had a chance last week to admit fault. You had a chance last night to step down quietly, but instead, you doubled down on lies. And tonight, the world sees you for what you are: not a manager, not a leader, but the architect of humiliation. Dalton's voice cracked, desperation leaking through. You'll ruin me, my career, my legacy. Daniel leaned in, his voice low but carried by every microphone. You ruined yourself. All I did was hold up the mirror. The studio erupted with camera flashes. Dalton slumped in his chair, defeated, his carefully built empire collapsing in real time. Daniel turned back to the audience, to the millions watching at home. This is bigger than one hotel, bigger than one man. Prejudice thrives in silence. But when silence is broken, prejudice withers. I am not here for revenge. I am here for change. And I promise you change is coming. The crowd in the studio rose in applause, thunderous, unstoppable. By the next morning, Dalton's name was poisoned. Shareholders voted him out unanimously. He was banned from managing any affiliated property. Sponsors pulled every deal. Paparazzi caught him leaving his penthouse with a single suitcase. Face hidden. Career over. Meanwhile, at the hotel, life began to shift. Staff who once walked stiff with arrogance now moved cautiously, aware. New hires came in diverse, respectful, eager. Marcus received a promotion to trainee supervisor, a reward for courage when silence ruled. In the lobby, a plaque was unveiled, engraved with Daniel's words, "Hospitality is humanity." Guests stopped to read it. Staff whispered it like a mantra. Slowly, the Palace of Marble was becoming a place of dignity. That evening, Daniel sat in the same lounge where his humiliation had begun. The leather chair felt different, now less a trap, more a throne reclaimed. Marcus approached with nervous excitement. Sir, we've had our first guest complaint under the new system, and we handled it. Transparent, fair, respectful. Just like you said. Daniel nodded, a hint of pride in his eyes. Good, that's how you build an empire that lasts not on marble, but on truth. Adrian joined him, setting a file on the table. Media wants another statement. They're calling you the face of corporate justice. Daniel smirked faintly. I didn't do this for titles. Then why? Adrian asked. Daniel's gaze drifted across the lobby, where laughter now sounded warmer, freer, untainted by malice. Because no one should ever feel what I felt that night. Not here. Not anywhere. Outside, the city roared with noise, with life, with change. Daniel Carter lifted his glass, voice low. meant only for himself, to justice, and to every silence finally broken. And with that, the curtain closed not on a man humiliated, but on a man who turned humiliation into fire, fire into justice, and justice into legacy. Dalton had been erased from the marble halls, but Daniel Carter's name would be etched in them forever. Weeks had passed, the frenzy of headlines cooled, the hashtags slowed, and the world, as it always did, turned its eyes to the next scandal. But for Daniel Carter, life had changed in ways no headline could capture. He stood at the edge of the hotel's rooftop terrace, the city skyline stretching into the horizon. Below him, traffic hummed like restless veins, the rhythm of millions moving forward. Adrian walked up, phone in hand. "You've got another invitation from the Global Hospitality Summit. They want you as keynote speaker." Daniel smiled faintly. "First they wanted to blacklist me, now they want to headline me." Adrian shrugged. "That's the world. Fickle, loud, but when you shake it hard enough, it listens." Daniel sipped his drink, gaze steady on the horizon. "Do you ever wonder if it's enough?" Adrian frowned. "What do you mean?" "This one hotel, this one scandal. It made noise, yes, but prejudice doesn't vanish because a man like Dalton got dethroned. It hides, it waits, it changes faces." Adrian nodded slowly. "True, but you gave people a blueprint. You showed them how to fight back with truth, with visibility. That's more than most ever do." Silence lingered between them, not heavy, but contemplative. Daniel thought of Marcus, now confidently leading his team downstairs, thought of the guests who had written letters of thanks, saying the viral moment gave them courage to speak up in their own lives, thought of the messages from strangers across the globe, pilots, teachers, students saying, "Your story is ours too." It wasn't about a hotel anymore. It was about every door where someone had been told, "Not you." Later that evening, Daniel found himself alone in the lobby. The plaque gleamed under soft lights. "Hospitality is humanity." He reached out, running his fingers across the words. He remembered the sting of that night, the laughter, the silence, the rage clawing at his chest. And then he remembered the fire that followed, the justice that burned brighter than shame. Sometimes, he realized, humiliation was not an ending. It was a beginning. A young receptionist approached shyly. "Mr. Carter, sorry to disturb you, but I wanted to say thank you for what you did." Daniel turned, surprised. "Thank me? For what?" The receptionist glanced at the plaque. "My father faced things like this all his life. He always told me, keep your head down, don't make waves. But when he saw your story, he told me, maybe it's time to lift your head up." Her eyes watered. "So thank you for making him believe it's possible." Daniel's chest tightened, the weight of her words settling deeper than any applause ever had. He placed a hand on her shoulder gently. "Don't thank me. Just promise me this. When you see someone silenced, don't let it stay quiet. Speak. Always speak." She nodded firmly. "I will." Later, as he stepped out into the cool night, Daniel looked back one last time at the grand entrance of the hotel. The marble glistened, the lights burned warm, but what mattered most was invisible, the shift in its spirit, the pulse of change now alive within its walls. He whispered softly, as though to the city itself, "This fight isn't finished, but it has begun." The streets swallowed him as he walked away, just another man in the crowd. But in every corner of the world where silence once reigned, echoes of his voice lingered, not as a victim, not even as a victor, but as a reminder that dignity cannot be denied, that truth always finds a stage, that justice, once sparked, spreads like wildfire. And so, beyond the marble walls, the story continued, not in headlines, not in speeches, but in the countless, quiet acts of courage it inspired. Daniel Carter's name might fade from trending lists, but his legacy would live on in every soul that chose to speak when silence was easier. The end.